Hello, everyone. My name is Sherry Nickerson, and I'm a director here at Old Line Government Affairs, and we welcome you to another edition of Online with Old Line. For this edition, we're thrilled to introduce Delegate Regina T. Boyce, representing District 43 in Baltimore City. Welcome, Delegate Boyce, and thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Thank you. Good morning to you.
So I'm going to give a little bit of background on Delegate Boyce, and this is not going to do her justice. So when we get to the questions, please feel free to elaborate on this. Delegate Boyce's political career is firmly rooted in community activism. After moving to the Waverly area of Baltimore City, she became very involved in helping to build a local playground and expanding Waverly Elementary Middle School. She also brushed up on her knowledge in areas of housing code violations, community organizing and outreach, emergency response, gangs, and community remediation. Delegate Boyce served as community liaison for the office of the City Council President, as well as Director of Adult Learning Center in the City of Baltimore. She was elected to the House of Delegates in 2018, where she serves on the Environment and Transportation Committee and the Commission on Environmental Justice and Sustainable Communities. And she's also a member of the Maryland Legislative Transit Caucus. So again, feel free to add to that. If you could just get us rolling, Delegate Boyce, with a little bit about yourself, your background, and the district that you represent.
Thank you so much, Sherry. I would say, I would start by saying, if in elementary school and if in high school or even college, you would have told me that I would be at the age of 41, 42, whenever I became, that I would be a delegate, like an elected official, I would have told you you are the biggest liar in the book. But I will say I've always spent my time just interested in helping people. And helping people in a way of not enabling, but lifting up. And so, at one point I wanted to be a psychologist and I wanted to do this and I wanted to do that, and just trying to find my way. And really, I think what we all know, we go to college, we major in our majors and minors, and then we have a change of things happen in life. And so I born in Washington, D.C., raised in Rockville, Maryland, and essentially lived in Baltimore County until after college, when, of course, what happens, you need a job. And I started working in the city at Johns Hopkins University in the athletic department. And that turned into 4 years later, or 4 years into it, deciding that I should just live in the city. It was ridiculous that I was leaving my mama's house every day. And so, I mean, that is the impetus, I think, of where I am now, is making the decision to live in the city. None of my family lives here. I mean, they're not far, but no one lives here. My two best friends live here. And that was kind of the start of saying, I want to be involved, and what does that look like? And I remember when I bought my house, before I bought my house, we were looking at houses in the area that I live in, because I used the Live Near Your Work program to purchase a house near my job, of course. And I remember the first thing I did is I was with my realtor, who's also a good friend. I said, I need to stop at this library. I think I'm probably going to live in this area, so I should probably have a library card at this Waverly library. And I did that. And the rest has been interesting. I always tell people I got involved because I went to a community association meeting, and the second meeting I went to, the whole board quit.
Wow.
And that left everyone kind of like, well, what do we do? And that's how I kind of got onto the board and got involved, and really learning about processes and how things work and how they don't work, and where are the holes and how do we fill those holes. And I think that's most important, because if you don't know how things work, if you don't know how processes work, you can't fix anything. You can't find solutions. And so doing that at the ground level within my community, and then working with communities surrounding, building the community-built playground at the stadium, the Memorial Stadium, and then being a part of that rebuilding when, unfortunately, an arsonist burnt down that community-built playground. And what the community did, and what the community always does, is re-rally itself and rebuilt it. And so it was just really also my trying to figure out where I lived because I wasn't from Baltimore. I didn't know a difference between a Waverly from a Hamden, from a Violetville. Like I didn't know, this is certainly a city of communities. Um, and so I had to do a lot of learning. So I was always on the ground because I was trying to learn about where I am, where I'm from, what's going on here, how did it get this way, why is it this way, and so it was also a part of my like ground education, like a re-education for myself. The 43rd district is vibrant. It is very central, and I always say it's where I live, and pretty much in the 43rd district you can get in and out of the city. You can get uptown, you can get downtown. If you want urban, if you want suburban, if you want English cottage, there's a variety. It's a variety of activities. It's a variety of people. It's a variety of housing stock. It's a variety of socioeconomic backgrounds. It's culturally, it's just a great place to live, and it's very centric and very diverse. And very active. I have a very active district, and so communities are active. They're active where they are locally, and they're certainly active citywide. And so it's just a little bit about just like who I am and how I essentially got here to this point.
So it sounds like you dove in immediately when you got there and just became very passionate about the area that you live. And
Yeah, I don't know. Something was like, isn't there like I mean, I was like, there's probably like an association or something. Like, I mean, I had no clue. I mean, and I had, at the time, interestingly enough, because I worked at Johns Hopkins University, of course, we have tuition remission. And during the time I was looking to, I was looking at houses and looking to purchase houses, I took this class called Real American Cities, Baltimore. And it was in then the business and education school, because they were two were together. And my professor, it was co-taught, my professor was Mary Pat Clark, who is the retired councilwoman, my councilwoman, and councilwoman, first woman council president of Baltimore City. And stuck to her like glue. Was like, who is this tiny little giant? And she was this ball of energy, and she was so knowledgeable. And I think that class activated me as I was, because it was learning about the city, learning about the history and the politics of the city. And then at the end of the class, it was like a 3-week class in May. Of course, everybody's need that last 3 credits. It was, we had to come up with our own policy. And it was just like, oh no, what am I going to do here? And it was just and we had to have a diary. It was very involved. So it was my spring to be like, oh, this is what I'm coming into, and this is where I'm moving to. And I think that just sparked more like, well, I need to know more. So yeah.
It sounds, it's interesting how when we're young, we have these great ideas of what we're going to do. I too was going into psychology. I actually have a master's in psychology, but clearly that's not what I ended up doing. But our experiences kind of propel us into things that we don't expect. And that's really, I think, something amazing about life in general. So you've been a member of the Maryland General Assembly for a couple of very tumultuous years. We talked about what inspired you to get there. How's your experience in Annapolis been the same or different than you were expecting when you ran for office?
So, I mean, to the kind of like the second point, the inspiration, there was none. I think what happened was I got a phone call, and someone said, we're trying to revamp the State Central Committee, and someone suggested you as someone who should be in the State Central Committee. And I was just like, I don't want to run for office. Are you crazy? Like, get out of here with that. Like, and I started meeting with these people because there were people I know, and people who were offering up my name were people who knew me and knew that I'd worked 5 years for the city council president. So as a liaison, and essentially as a liaison in the very district that I serve in now. And so I knew those communities, and I knew the people, I knew the issues. And I just started thinking about it, but then it just prompted me to ask more questions and ask more questions. And of course, I met with my mentors, Jack Young, Mayor Young, and Councilwoman Mary Pat Clark. I was like, what do you think about this? It's like, I've never had any aspirations. I mean, even when I was in the council president's office, I'm gonna run you, you're gonna be, I'm just like, no, I'm not, sir. It's not happening. Like, not on my watch. It's not happening. Like, it's just not happening. Like, I'm not interested. Like, I enjoyed the work. I loved working on his behalf at the pleasure of the council president. But I was like, I ain't doing this. Are you crazy? No, thank you. But I started to ask my questions, if so many people are saying, asking me, what's going on here, right? Like, people all the time, oh, sure, you should run for something. And it wasn't that. And so I asked and asked, and they both were just like, I don't understand why you just don't run for delegate. I was just like, that's even worse. Like, what are you talking about? And so it's one of those moments where you have to sit and you have to ponder and meditate and pray and think about it. And I made a split decision. I just made a decision, like, I'm gonna run for delegate. And I didn't know what was involved. I didn't know about logos and colors and all this stuff that I had to do, but I made that decision, and then it was from there. And then I won. And then it was like, I won. Oh God.
So you're
But I say all that to say is that if I was never asked, I would never be here. These are not decisions women make on their own. These are not decisions women decide, whether it's a job or an elected position. If we're not 100%, if we don't feel like we're 100% qualified, we don't apply. Men feel 50% qualified and, are 50% qualified and yet are confident to be 100% qualified and get the job. And we pass up opportunities that we are more than likely qualified for. And so, the lesson is that, when someone asks, don't be quick to say no, really think about it and really discern. But again, if I wasn't asked, I wouldn't be here. And ever since, it's been a roller coaster. As you know, we have not had what others would say a normal session. Someone mentioned the other day, said, "Woo, y'all freshmen ain't never gonna have a normal session, are you?" So of course, our first session, just getting my feet wet. I didn't put in any bills. I wanted to learn the process, learn who my colleagues were, learn about my committee, and the speaker dies. It was gosh, I mean, the emotions are just flooding back. It was just like, what is going on? Because up until that point, people were talking about, this is great, side-eye is great, gonna be a party here, it's gonna be a party there, we're gonna hang out here, we're gonna celebrate it all. And when the clock struck midnight, I mean, the poor interns didn't know whether or not to drop the balloons. And I remember they were looking at each other, and it was like one or two balloons just kind of dropped. And it was so hard. And then it was the fight of who's going to be the speaker. Right. And then we come out of that, and it's like, okay, 2020, let's go. It's going to be the year. Let's go. And then we have a pandemic.
Right.
And all this work I did, all these bills I filed, I was feeling very confident, cut short. And I was like, wait, what? No. And, and then now we're in this pandemic, and now we're in this, what we are doing now, right? Virtually. I'd probably be somewhere in your office right now having this interview, but it also is an opportunity to create access to so many folks who don't have access to this process. And so that was, I would say, the positive, the beauty of this, because think about people who come to testify, and you spend all day and all your money to get 2 minutes, 3 minutes, depending on what committee you're in, to testify and then leave. And now you can do it virtually. And I think it's amazing what a pandemic can bring up and bring out. And so we know that's what happened.
Will remain in effect at some, like,
I'm hoping a hybrid would be certainly it's certainly welcomed, I think, by all. I mean, I mean, it was, yeah, yeah. And then, of course, this year we worked in a pandemic, right? And so being tested, I made sure I was tested like every week or every 2 weeks, or if there was an exposure or a rumor of an exposure, I got tested. And then, of course, we end up being vaccinated. And then, you know, the buzz about that. But then working, I would say, I didn't live on campus when I went to college, but Annapolis during session is like campus, right? Like, and it was a dead campus. I mean, you know, nobody right outside of your our office, nobody, you know, towards the end, certainly in the mall and on the steps. But I would say also it was a blessing because this was such a so many priorities because the pandemic overly exposed kind of what's been under the carpet that we kind of keep, you know, kicking down. And like, wow, like all the things that we've gotten done, I sometimes think I'm not sure if we would have got so much done if we would have had such a full and robust and busy campus. And so again, the beauty of allowing the time to still meet with advocates and lobbyists and constituents, but also having the ability to like thoroughly go through this stuff and get it done, but most importantly, get it done right. I mean, I was in bed most times by like 9 or 10 o'clock. I mean, if that, because I mean, it was like committee's over. What do? You go
That was
dinner?
the nice part.
Yeah, I mean,
watch sessions sometimes from my couch.
Yeah, right. I mean, you know, everything was from my office. And so it was pleasantly nice. And it was even nicer when we were finally, you know, when we be on the House floor, even though we were split, it was like a little bit of normalcy, right? And so then now we got this pandemic, and then next year it's an election year, and it's also redistricting. And so here's this other year, and I tell you, if this is trial by fire, I have been burnt and I am now smoking. And so, you know,
you're surviving though and thriving.
I think so. I think so. But you know, it's certainly been interesting. But it's also been, you know, accomplishments that have come from it, and access and kind of moving Maryland forward in the way that we are, and being an example not only for the state but for the country about what we're doing and why we're doing it, and the importance behind it. So
that's great. So I know you've only been in the state legislature for a couple of years, so we'll say you've been in public service for many years. Of all your years in public service, what is the accomplishment you're most proud of?
And I'm going to get a little emotional. I loved working with adult education.
Okay, great.
It was the most instantly rewarding position that I've ever had. Working with non-native English speakers, working with individuals with low reading and math skills, but seeing, you know, from a psychological point of view, right? Seeing what happens to somebody, physically seeing what happens to somebody when the light bulb turns on. When all of a sudden I get it, when all of a sudden I can put that sentence together. And as my non-native English speakers would say, you know, teacher understands me. Teacher, did I say that right? Of course you did. You know, English is hard. It's such a hard language. We have 20 words that all have the same meaning, and then we decide which one we want, right? In other languages, it's not the same. And so seeing when that light bulb goes off, seeing like weeks of work and you know, people get mad and they persevere and they work all day and they come in the evening to get this education. And when the light bulb goes off and the possibilities come flooding through them, it is like, you know, you got someone who comes in and, you know, for the most part, and they're putting themselves down, and I don't have this and I don't have that. I say, yes, but how old are you? You have a job, you have a home, you have children that you've invested in who have an education that you don't have, but now that you seek, you've done more. You've accomplished a lot. Don't let this one thing make you not, an accomplished individual. But once they get to that level, the door opens about who they want to be, what they want to do, why they want to do it. The possibilities become endless. And that is the story of education. A good, thorough, foundational education is a game changer. It is an opportunity, and it's a door opener for anybody who wants it and needs it. And it was always rewarding to see that. It was always rewarding to see when they weren't at their best and then they were angry. It was a psychological job. They're in my office. Oh, Miss Regina, it's like, okay, you can't today, go home. That's okay. Come back tomorrow. Right? You're not ready now.
I could not agree more. I would say education is the foundation of our confidence.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's, we had a English language learner who was African. I believe she was maybe from Liberia, because she spoke English and she spoke somewhat of a language, but she's an older woman. I mean, she's African, so she looks very young,
Right.
Beautiful woman, but she was an older woman. She had like grown kids my age, daughters, and she could not read or write. Could not read or write. And as the story goes, her daughters, they're driving up 695, and she read the sign that said, it was the sign that says like to Charles Street or whatever it is, and the daughter almost wrecked her car because she had never heard her mother read. Never heard her mother read.
What a
and she had to pull over, and it was just like, again, the aha moment. And to that point, when that woman, she would come to class, we'd always try to help people get jobs or whatever. And she's like, nope, Miss Regina. She's like, my education comes first. And I was like, yes, ma'am. And so if that job interfered with her being able to continue her education, it was a no. She can get as many jobs as she wants to, but not if it interfered with her getting her education. And that was, to me, just monumental. Like, not only am I'm putting this first because now I get it.
Right.
Now I understand
it. That you're so very passionate about that. That's fantastic.
It is. I mean, it was one of those things where it's like, I had done it at my home church that I went to, was part of the GED ministry. It was like, I just should get involved in something. So I had a foundational, knowledge about it. And when the job was offered to do that and oversee a community center, I was just like, yeah, like these are kind of like some rooted passions for me. But it is just the thing that I end up having to leave, but something that to this day I tell people it was what I loved the most. Definitely hard, psychologically, physically, emotionally, and psychologically. You laugh with your students, you cry with your students, you cuss with your students. You have to tell some students, you're not ready. Come back when you're ready. The door's always open, but right now you are not ready. But when you are ready, we will be ready. But if you're not ready, we can't be ready for you. And, just loving, kind individuals. And the best part was after every semester, we would have like a gathering, everybody would bring food, and oh God. So you're talking about American food, you're talking about soul food, you're talking about Middle Eastern food and African food and Asian food and Latin food. And I'm in my office working, and it would never fail. One of my students would come in, teacher, I cook. You don't want to eat my food? I'm like, oh God, I'm coming right now. Like, and it's just how appreciative people were that you took the time to invest in them. And it was a rewarding, I think, certainly my badge of honor.
That's fantastic. So moving forward, you've accomplished so much in like I said, your public service in general. Moving forward, do you have anything like immediately that you want to accomplish? Something that's left in you?
I've got big dreams, sometimes I'm at like 1,000 feet view. I'm like, all this stuff. I'm like, girl, bring it down. And so there are a lot of things that I don't have like there's some people who have like a very single issue. They're very single issued. I feel like if you saw my bill list this year and last year, it's kind of all over the place, right? And so I'm a solution finder, right? Like I'm not a solution trying to look for a problem, but like I see these problems and I say, what's the solution? And it doesn't matter what it is. What's the hole? What's the loophole? How do we make things different? But most importantly, I think my passion involves how we build families. People, I ran on our families, our city, our future, because if our families are not whole, and whatever those barriers are that don't make families whole, our communities, our cities, our towns, our municipalities, our counties are not going to make it, which means our city and our state doesn't make it. And so how do we make families whole? And so that's a circular, a question, because it's about where people live. Are they appropriately housed? Are they appropriately educated? Do they have do they have a job that pays them what they're worth? And most importantly, pays them to be able to survive in this economy. Educated, overeducated, undereducated. I mean, there's no such thing as being overeducated, but there are people who are overeducated and then can only get a job within their field that pays below $12 and $10 an hour, right? Modern day slavery, it's ridiculous. We want more for less. It's not going to happen. We've got to pay people what they're worth. We see that now, like all these companies are starting to lift the wage because, again, people are on unemployment, not because they don't want to work. It's because it's not enough. Right. They're not getting paid enough at the jobs that they would otherwise be at. And so that says that we've got to do more. And strengthening families, strengthening a family unit, whatever that unit looks like, is only going to improve our communities. It is only going to improve our housing. It is only going to improve our infrastructure. It's only going to improve our cities and then our state. And so to me, that is my mission. And whatever that looks like. Does it look like making sure we have emergency stock inhalers in schools? Then yes, absolutely. If it means recognizing LGBTQ certifications for MBE and MDU, absolutely. If it's given the city the ability to tax different classifications of property so it can diversify a little bit, lower property taxes, and figure out how to generate more money without charging more, then let's do it. So whatever that is where I want to be, right? Because it's so multifaceted. One thing that I'm trying to work on this summer, besides my bills that didn't make it out of the Senate, that's another question. That's another issue, is really looking at an adult education curriculum for our colleges and universities. I think adult education is important. It is different. It is not your everyday. We would hire amazing teachers, but they're all K-12 type teachers, or they've been professors, or, and they were excellent teachers. But to teach an adult, it's a whole different mindset. You got people who've come in with their 20, 30, 40 years of structure, things their way. They've come with how they kind of manage their challenge or their inabilities, right? And so they've manipulated them differently. Now we have to help them unmanipulate them and then do it the right way. And so something I'm looking into, and hopefully that I can it may not be something that needs to happen legislatively, but I'm working many of those angles. So that's my kind of like priority, is the family.
Great. Well, to wrap things up, what is one unique or fun fact about yourself that you'd like to share with everyone?
Through this conversation, I feel like it's not one, it's many. So one is that I am actually a kinesiology major from Towson University, and kinesiology is the study of human movement. It is used to be what we would call physical education. I was going to be a sports psychologist at one point in my life. I am not, but I always say working with people all day and all day long, I'm definitely using my I'm
I would
using
say
my
that's the
degree.
case, definitely,
Yes.
especially with your adult education piece.
Yeah. I'm an American, of course, but I'm a first generation American. Both my parents are from the Caribbean. My father was from Barbados, and my mother is from Jamaica. And so, yes, and so hail from DC. They all still live there. Both my grandmothers and three of my aunts. So DC is actually my first home, the first city I lived in, but it's the city that I don't know that well, other than going to
Right.
grandma's and auntie's house. And I think the last thing is that people see that I may be athletic, but I ran track, of course. I ran track. I was a cheerleader. People don't believe that. I was a cheerleader in high school, middle school and high school. And I played soccer and lacrosse.
Wow. So you're very well rounded.
I think so. I mean, I played the flute for like 6 months in elementary school, but whatever.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Delegate Boyce, for taking the time to be with us today. We really look forward to having more conversations with you and to working with you in the future. For
Yeah.
anybody that's out there listening, for more conversations with legislators and more online with Old Line, please visit oldlinelobbying.com. Thank you so much, Delegate Boyce, for your
Thank
time.
you so much, Sherry. This was amazing. Thank you.